overcoming poverty, burning off stress, paying attention with ADHD, building a career, beating a painful genetic disorder. After 13 years of helping others do the same, fitness became a foundation for my life's greatest gift and challenge, becoming a father. My name's Alex Van Houten, and I believe that what I eat, how I move, and what habits I live by are the rock upon which I build my physical, psychological, and spiritual well-being. And whatever I do will rub off on my kids and my community. Welcome to Defining Dad Bod, where we work to untangle the messy knots of the health and fitness industry as if your children's lives depended on it. Because they do. This is where we decide to make our bodies stand for something bigger than ourselves. This is where we find practical wisdom to live by, one powerful conversation at a time. May the words spoken here inspire you to keep moving forward no matter where you are. Who knows who you could be if you could become 1% better every single day.
We can do the show thanks to the support of listeners just like you. For more information how you can become part of the inner circle, go to definingdadbod.com/inner circle. That's definingdadbod.com/inner circle.
If I needed instruction on how to stress myself out as good as you, what would you tell me to do? What would I do first? You got to get rid of the idea that it's woo-woo, that it's attached to religion somehow. There are ancient religions, we're talking thousands of years old, that have incorporated forms of meditation in their practice. But that doesn't mean they own it. When you're meditating, try not to think about it in terms of, did I do it right or did I do it wrong? No such thing. You are refining your capacity to be fully alert and aware.
What's up, guys? This is Alex Van Houten with Defining Dad Bod. I hope you're doing so well. I'm super, super excited, perhaps partially because of my caffeine and perhaps partially because of the guy that I've got on air with me, Mr. Brian R. King. How are you today, Brian?
Doing awesome, Alex. It's great to be talking to you again.
I'm so excited to have you back on, man. We talked about 6 or 7 months ago. I want to say time's been going by really fast for me, so it might even be further back than that. But if you want to check out my conversation with Brian prior to this, you can check out on the Defining Dad Bod podcast, The Mindset King. It was a powerful episode. And I want to give you an opportunity, Brian, to reintroduce yourself to my audience because there might be some people here who didn't hear that conversation. Where are you coming from, brother? And what is it that you're doing right now? And then you and I can get into meditation, ADHD, self-compassion, and whatever else we get into today.
Man, where am I coming from? My life has just been punctuated by one big pothole or cliff after another. I was raised with undiagnosed dyslexia and ADHD, so I really struggled through school. My graduation present from high school was stage 3 testicular cancer. I went on to get married and have 3 boys, all of whom have forms of autism and ADHD. And in my adult life is when I finally got the diagnosis of ADHD and dyslexia. And I also have multiple sclerosis and some other stuff you've probably never heard of. So a vast majority of my life has been having some kind of health issue. And it's not something I enjoy. You know, I take the vitamins and whatever people say is supposed to do the trick. But the reality is I still have these illnesses, but I've also still got a family to provide for, and I've still got a life to live. So I had to find a mindset that allowed me to accomplish my goals regardless of what my body was feeling. Not to say that I ignore it, but I incorporate it, I balance it out. And it's allowed me to become much more resourceful than maybe the average person because of the unique combination of problems I need to solve on a daily basis, not only for myself, but for my boys. And I've been able to parlay that into an entrepreneurial venture where I've been helping families that have autism or ADHD or maybe even a chronic illness in there that's really causing stress on the family. And I work with them on how to manage that and how to live fully regardless. So I hope that answers your question.
No, I love that. I think that's one of the reasons I find you a kindred spirit, brothers. In my personal training practice grew out of wrestling with EDS and the functionality or lack thereof of my own joints. And, you know, I help somebody who's 65, 70 years old. They'd approach me on the fitness floor. We'd talk about training and they're like, how can you help me? You're like 25. And I'm like, yeah, but my joints are more like yours. So like, we're going to get along great. You know,
it's not my age, my expertise. That's why you came.
That's exactly right. And so, you know, with that kind of kindred spirit in mind, I love just the overall mindset, and I know this is your thing, the mindset king, the overall mindset of approaching the obstacles in life. It's not always pretty. In fact, it's rarely ever pretty. I'm looking at both of us and, well.
Yeah, every day I'm battling uphill against pain and fatigue to some degree.
Exactly. And then tackling that in a way that gives you what's needed to help others find the path through that stuff as well, which is powerful. And I don't know, just like having you around. I'm going to high five you right here since I've got you and it's my show. I can do that too. Now let's
virtual high five.
That's right. So one of the things that I really wanted to dive in with you today is the concept and topic of meditation. It's a broad subject. It's something we could spend a long time talking about. But primarily, there are two things that are really on my mind with regard to this. First, when I built the hormone pyramid, which is the process that I coach clients through at Defining Dad Bod, we go from insulin to cortisol to testosterone to thyroid. It's a pretty comprehensive and long list of things that we do. But when we address cortisol, you know, that is the stress hormone. When we address cortisol, one of the things that we work into that is a practice in meditation. And it might look very similar to spending some time post-exercise, some really good research around meditative post-exercise practices, boosting growth hormone and DHEA. But, you know, out of all the things I ask people to do, like limit their alcohol intake, increase their compound lifts, limit sugar, add veggies and stuff, meditation is consistently across the board the thing that, one, people struggle with, just like finding 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes in a day to commit to it. And then two, how do I start? What is meditation? How do I even get there? You know, because it seems like such a, I don't know, strange thing, perhaps, especially on the Western culture side of things, to ask somebody to commit to meditation. So I'm really excited we get to talk about this because I know that you have a meditative practice. I know that part of what you coach and guide clients through is how to incorporate that. And then especially, I know I'm forming a lot of things in here, but this is a part of it. If you struggle with ADHD, all right, like there's nothing, it seems like there's nothing more on the other side of the coin than meditation. I'm inattentive, hyperactive, have a really hard time with impulsivity, and you want me to do nothing. Awesome. That seems to be no greater differentiation between those two. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this today. Tell me a little bit, I guess we'll dive into the subject easily. Tell me a little bit about why is meditation important, and how do you start with somebody who's like, you want me to sit in a room and do nothing?
Well, meditation, first and foremost, you got to get rid of the idea that it's woo-woo, that it's attached to religion somehow. There are ancient religions, we're talking thousands of years old, that have incorporated forms of meditation in their practice. But that doesn't mean they own it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, meditation is a practice. It's like, you know, going to the gym. It's any skill you want to develop. And it essentially is about unlearning reactivity. Our tendency to just impulsively follow a shiny object, or when somebody cuts us off, we just react to it very strongly, maybe using all those colorful words we learned in the locker rooms. And it's not something we decide to do. It just flies out of us. That's a reaction. If you spend your entire life that way, react, you're not building your life. You're just reacting to whatever's coming at you. That means things outside you have more say in the actions you take than your own decisions. And when you are able to observe what your mind is doing, what kind of chatter is going on, maybe you'll even react to some things while you're in meditation, it allows you to spot those little gremlins so you know where you need to spend some extra attention. Because during the day, when you're running on your hamster wheel, you're not taking inventory necessarily of the habits that you're employing, good or bad, of the things you're reacting to. You're just getting through the day.
It's like almost like I'm surviving rather than living.
Precisely, yeah.
Or at least that's the mindset kind of domains I think of, you know, when you're surviving, it's kind of like you're I picture a rabbit, you know, like a rabbit doesn't think about much, right? Or at least I don't imagine it thinks.
Survival is very instinct driven. It's very primal.
Yes.
And you see a lot of animals that they just kind of are doing their animal thing. And you tell, well, you're doing that because it's a rabbit, or you're doing that because it's a bird. But sometimes, because we have a couple birds too, you can see little differences in them. So you know, okay, that's you. That's your little quirk. But when they're doing things that are the same, okay, that's just because that's how a bird is hardwired, But getting into meditation really allows you to peel away those layers of things that were just kind of thrust upon you that you adapted because the person was older than you, smarter than you respected them, and you really didn't question the input you were getting. You just incorporated it. That's why people get to the point where they have a midlife crisis and they ask themselves, okay, well, I've got everything I was supposed to get and I'm still not happy. What gives? And it's because they've been living somebody else's life the whole time.
I can't believe he just said that. Literally 2 shows ago, we just had Joel Ingram on to talk about his midlife crisis and what that actually looked like. He's looking around like, I got the job, my kids, but this isn't what I want. What happened?
Where's the meaning? Where's the substance? Yeah.
Exactly. So let me see if I can summarize that just a little bit, because you said something in there that was just really good. Unlearning reactivity. That one of the primary parts of the meditative practice is to put yourself in a space wherein it sounds like you can step back from the reactivity of everyday life and begin to, one, observe it. Like, this is what happened, because how often are we really chronicling what actually happened? And then 2, making some decisions about what could be different in the future. Perhaps my feeling, perhaps my perception, perhaps my actions. It sounds to me like they're a little, not only unlearning reactivity, but then perhaps in that space, you're also able to make a conscious choice about what things should be or what you would like them to be. Is that right?
Well, the bigger context, and this is one of the reasons why I think people resist it so much, they'll do the measuring the food, they'll go to the gym. One thing that I think unconsciously scares them about meditation is there's nothing about meditation that's about getting more control. And those other things they can control. All right, I can measure these ingredients and I can time this workout, and there are all these concrete things. Now you're asking me to sit still and not try and control the thoughts that are coming through my head, but just observe them? That's too passive. That's lazy. I can't do that. No, it's not lazy. You have to be extremely alert. You have to be focused, and you have to be willing to be hands off and just observe life without reacting to it. And that's what you learn to do through mindful meditation.
Oh, that's deep. We're going to start talking about how to start that in a second, but I have to comment on that. I use a piece of equipment called a Pinoe analyzer, which is something that I use to test metabolism for clients, the oxygen to carbon dioxide exchange ratio when they're exercising or resting or whatever. But it can see how many calories you're burning. Like, that's one of the things that you can learn from VO2. And what's really funny is when I take my type A clients, you have to relax so that we can see your caloric burn in a day and what your fat utilization and carb utilization is. I can see in my type A clients when I say, all right, you need to wear this and I need you to relax for about 10 minutes. They get more and more stressed. The line goes up further and further the longer they lay there. And I'm like, no, you're supposed to be relaxing. Like, you're supposed to deactivate here. And they're like, oh, I'm just thinking about all the stuff that happens in the day. It's like the less they're physically doing, the more internal chaos is occurring. And so
A-types define progress through action. I've got to be doing and creating and accomplishing and selling and whatever benchmark they set for themselves.
I love that. So before we get into some of the nuts and bolts of the foundations, what do you say to somebody like that? Because I find myself in that camp pretty often, and I see value in meditation, but at the same time, there's something to be said about this is still valuable to you, but it's not valuable in the way that you're used to assigning value. What would you say to somebody like that who just gets stressed out about sitting still for 10 minutes?
Well, it's the fact that they get stressed out in general. I will ask them, how do you stress yourself out? If I needed instruction on how to stress myself out as good as you, what would you tell me to do? What would I do first? And it brings to their awareness, well, I guess I'd probably think about all the negative stuff that's going to happen, and I'd worry about how I can't do anything about it. Yeah, how's that working for you? You want to keep doing that? You want to keep responding to life that way? Or would you like to be able to choose the thinking that will create the state you want, the perception of life, the experience of it that you want? Would you rather have that? Okay, well, you need to start by observing exactly what your mind is currently doing So you can look for opportunities to say, I don't need to participate in that. I can just watch my brain chatter away and suggest these negative things and say, no, I'm good. Let it pass on by. You can also choose to insert thoughts in there that are more in service of what it is you want to do, and sit with those thoughts a little bit and see if you want to wear those for a while.
So hearing you talk about this, one of the pictures that comes to mind is like you're scrolling through social media, and we've all seen that post that we just can't help it. Like, oh, I have to comment on that thing. Like, and it's probably not.
But you don't.
But you don't. You go, you know what? Keep scrolling. Moving on.
One of the things that I emphasize with the people I work with is, regardless of how often you are encouraged, and Facebook wants you to engage with everything you possibly can, right? And the media, when they have a news story, they want you to go to their website and share, comment on this story. What do you think? In order to get our eyeballs and ad dollars and all that other stuff, society is encouraging us to have an opinion about everything. One of the most fundamental boundaries we can set with ourselves is to give ourselves permission to not have an opinion about everything.
And that includes all of the mental chatter.
Right, because there is so much, the mental chatter by and large is reactive. It's fear-driven. And once you realize that, it's much easier to just say, oh, I know what this is about. I know what you're trying to tell me. I appreciate that behind the scenes, there's this chatter that's looking out for danger to keep me safe from either emotional or physical harm, but I don't need to participate in that all day long.
Right, because the same system's telling you to watch out for mountain lions. And I mean, if you were that preoccupied with mountain lions all day long, you're not going to get anywhere, first of all. And second of all, unless you live in Colorado and you're going on a trail run, it's very unlikely that the mountain lion system is necessary for you right now.
Yeah, what's unfortunate, though, is that our brain treats danger equally. So you say, oh man, I got an email from my boss. And you start having that reaction like you would if it was a mountain lion.
That's right, yeah. Traffic. Urgh. Yeah, kids didn't get ready for bed on time. Urgh.
Yeah, threat is threat, according to the nervous system.
That's right.
So being able to step back from that and just observe it and say, that's the direction things are going. I'm not going to participate. I'm going to go this way instead. And by learning to be an observer, you kind of get out of the river. Instead of swimming along and splashing around and you're getting yourself all wet and you're part of the chaos, you just step back and watch it and say, wow, look at that. There's a stick floating down there and there's a leaf and I'm here dry on the shore.
That is my favorite picture I've ever heard with regard to meditating. And I'll tell you why. Because for somebody who has a brain that can be predisposed to ADHD regularly, it feels like when I help people from a meditative perspective, that it's a stream. Like, oh, you step back and you observe. For my practice, I felt like it's like the Mississippi, like this giant, like you got to swim for like 10 minutes to get out of this thing before you're finally standing on the shore bank. That's a really good picture. I appreciate that because you're right. When you can step out of that, there's a difference in observing the flow, so to speak, of the river. And then further, and I don't mean for this to sound completely esoteric, but there's a realization that you are not the river. You're the entity that can come outside of the river and observe it. Because for many of us, we feel like we ourselves are all of the thoughts and all of the opinions all at once.
That is such a pivotal insight because when you see, and one of the reasons we have so much conflict in this world is because people take ownership of their thinking. I believe this, my belief is that, or my opinion this, and they make it seem like it's not so much a tool they grabbed to use to solve a problem somehow, that it's hardwired in them and can't be removed. Otherwise, they lose their identity. When the truth of the matter is, it's just another thought. A belief is just another thought.
Well said.
Yeah. And when it comes right down to it, you believe what you believe because it helps you create a specific outcome. And if it's causing you issues, well, you got to look in the toolbox and find something that works better. Or you need to modify it. So it's the lifelong students, the ones that are teachable, that are curious, that ask a lot of questions. They're the ones that are not as attached to these very limiting beliefs and opinions and such. But it comes back to realizing that you don't have to have an opinion about everything. Now, look at what you're doing with the Defining Dad Bod. You've got a very well-defined lane. It's so much easier to live your life, I imagine, when you stay in that lane.
Oh, yeah. Because there are nuances to health and fitness everywhere. And as long as I go, you know what? I'm not a woman postpartum. I'm just going to keep my thoughts about that to myself. That frees me up pretty beautifully, honestly, as a good example, I think, to help the group of people who are interested in the idea of leaving a legacy of health and fitness, especially from a fatherhood perspective.
Boom, right there. You just said it. You articulated it clearly. Who are your people? Who are you helping? What outcome are you creating for them? What kind of experience of life do you want to have? Everything else is just extra. And if it's not your jam, maybe you refer to somebody else, or you just say, sorry, I can't help you, but I wish you well on your journey. Keep asking. You'll find who you need. But the problems of the world are none of your business. Just figure out what you're passionate about, what problems you love solving for people. Go out there and serve, and don't worry about the rest of the noise.
That's such good practical advice. On the practical note, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of meditation, because sometimes when I say meditation, what people picture and what I'm talking about aren't really the same thing, right? We've been talking about like the mindset around meditation, and I don't want you to go sit in a room and think about nothing, because that doesn't work. Don't think about a white elephant. Ah, crap. Like, there it is. I just ruined it. When I say to meditate, I mean something specific for people. From an atmospheric perspective, from a practical perspective, from a time stamp perspective, in your mind, when you're talking to somebody about getting started with meditation, what advice do you have about setting the mood, so to speak, and setting aside the time? Like, what does that actually need to visibly look like if someone's going to get started with a meditative practice?
Well, I recommend doing something other than the formal practice to start off with, because the formal practice, as I learned it, is about sitting upright, being very, very alert, and being immersed in the experience that you're having this moment. And as much as possible, being aware of that. I was taught initially to examine the rising and falling of the belly as I breathe, pay attention to the inhalation and the exhalation. But there are some people that will get overloaded by the chatter in their head. So I can't do it. My brain was just telling me I need to get up and move. So one thing I recommend is start with eating breakfast. Is there a specific aspect of that you can focus on? Focus on the feeling of the spoon touching your lip and you're sipping the milk, or you're moving the cereal around and you're feeling the texture and the temperature changes. And that's what you're focused in on. Because there are some people that really are not sure when they're paying attention, because they're so used to being scattered. They're so used to their brain, flipping all over the place. So you're paying attention when you're aware of what's happening right now.
I love this.
And you may become distracted.
So you say, hey, you pick one thing in your day. It could be breakfast. It could be your walk to work. It could be whatever, an insert thing you do every day here. Like, this is the thing that we're going to be so mindful of that we're not going to allow ourselves to do anything else, but be mindful of this experience. Is that what I'm hearing from you? It's like, hey,
yeah, exactly.
You're not answering messages while you're eating breakfast.
Right.
All right. You're not calling your mom while you walk to work. Like, you're breathing in the daisies, feel the sun on your skin. Like, what is that experience like? And let's catalog that.
And it's a matter of just observing it, not judging it. So when you're eating something and say, oh, this is sweet, you don't go and say, oh, this is too sweet, man. Oh, man, this is like suffocatingly sweet. I want to spit this out, man. I mean, I should have checked this better. This isn't ripe. Who the heck decided to put this on the produce shelf? They should be fired. And people go off in this big conversation when they don't need to go any further than, oh, this is sweet. This is delicious. Just observe it. And you can take that to something else too. You can practice mindfulness when you're going to the bathroom, when you're laying on your pillow, like you said, when you're walking to work. So many opportunities.
What do you feel about exploring mindfully, exploring memories that might be elicited by an action? Is that something that you would say, let's observe that? Or is that something that you would recommend steering your attention more toward the present rather than the past?
Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, so I love your cereal example. I recently introduced my son to Cinnamon Life because...
Man, they still make that?
They still make it. we don't eat a lot of cereal in my house, as you can imagine. The whole Defining Dad Bod thing, we generally keep the sugary carbs to a minimum around here. But I was like, hey, man, you're a young kid. You need to experience some of the things that I experienced in my childhood. Why? I don't have a good reason. It's just part of the package. So got some Cinnamon Life, and I was sitting there eating it, and I was remembering, the last time I had this, I was probably like 11 years old, getting ready for middle school. My little brother was 1. He's like crying in the back because he needs his bottle. It just brought me to a memory in that vein, and I shared it with my son. I'm like, hey, man, like, last time I ate this, I was like this tall. It was crazy. So what do you think about, because when we become mindful of things and you turn off, or at least it's been my experience, I don't want to speak for everybody here, but we turn off the sound of the present and the future. Sometimes it taps us into aspects of ourselves that we didn't know was there, but it's there anyway. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, also keep in mind that the past and the future are just manufactured. The past is your memory, the future is your imagination. Either way, you're creating it. And the best example is you got a car accident, 5 people saw it, you get 5 different stories, even though they saw the same event. So what you remember of your childhood is your memory of it. Because I've had conversations with my siblings who claim that there were things going on that was totally over my head. I grew up in the same house that they did, and they saw my parents and our childhood very differently. So understanding your own subjectivity and the fact that maybe I missed some stuff. No, I can guarantee you missed some stuff because you are impressing your meaning, your emotional biases, your assumptions, everything that is in your head that you've collected from all these different experiences you've had, and you're using it to filter this experience. So keep in mind that positive or negative, it's just what you remember, as opposed to this is exactly what happened.
Noted. I'll keep that in mind next time I'm telling Gabriel about life.
But also understand that this is how that memory is manifesting right here, right now. So it is still a very in-the-moment experience.
So reserving judgment is, in your mind, an important hallmark of the meditative practice.
Because being mindful means you're allowing your mind to be filled with the experience of the moment. And if a feeling comes up that you are reminded of from somewhere in the past, clearly that trigger, that feeling is happening right now. So you can spend some time with that because we all know emotions come and emotions go. So this happiness emotion comes up as you're remembering eating that as a child, and then you allow it to go, and you can say to yourself, man, that was a great memory. That was so pleasant. I'm so glad I remember that. And you let it go. Let it pass on by. Because whether it's past or whether it's an imagined future, it's your relationship to it that matters.
Right.
Are you getting caught up in it, or can you be an observer of it?
I love that. So one of the things that I've done in personally working with people, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is I've used guided meditation. So let's say you're moving a little beyond the mindfulness of the experience and you're ready to explore further, not just breakfast or whatnot, but you're ready to do the thing where you set aside some time in a different space and you're letting somebody guide you through this. There are a couple pretty good practitioners I know through YouTube, that do a great job of guided meditation. I had the experience where I invited some of my students to mindfully meditate as well. So we had about 30 of us in a room listening to a guided meditation. It was interesting. Several of them had never meditated before. And so we open our eyes and go to share our experience. And there's a girl in the back and she's just like weeping, like literally like crying. I'm like, you're a really put together person. What just happened? And she didn't have a lot to share about it. But the point is that she apparently experienced something that really mattered to her in there, and she did it without judgment, and then she was kind of willing not to run out of the room crying. Instead, she just kind of sat there in it. So what experiences have you had with guided meditation, and how do you generally recommend that in practice with clients?
Well, just in my experience with it, guided meditation tends to have an outcome in mind. You're going to meditate on relaxation. You meditate on finding the compassion within you.
Yeah.
There's some that are supposed to straighten out your chakras. There's thousands of different kinds of ways to do it. So what you eventually settle on has to do with your personal goals.
Fair, yeah.
What do you want to accomplish with this? Mine was much different. I was taught in a traditional Buddhist form, mindfulness meditation. But you have transcendental meditation. You've got some that involves chanting or humming a mantra. And, it just really what floats your boat. Experiment a little bit, see what makes you feel most centered, most present, most at home in your own skin, and go with that. So guided meditations work for a lot of people. For me, I would much rather not be led, which is what a guided meditation does. I would much rather just kind of sit and observe what's happening.
I love that. Thanks for your thoughts there. I'm kind of picking your brain on the meditative course, if you don't mind, because it seems like this is something not a lot of people talk about, but a lot of people want to know about. So
yeah, sure.
if you like.
It's my foundational practice of all the strategies that I use to manage my life. The foundational bedrock is my meditation practice.
My wife would say similar about me. And I tell her the way we speak it in our house is, I need some solitude. Like, I'm going to take this block of time on the weekend and do this. I'll even repay the favor. You can do whatever you want. I'll take care of the household while you do X, Y, Z. But I need this solitude. And what I say is to make my life make sense again, to put all the pieces back together and whatnot. One of the pieces of my meditative practice that's been really powerful for me, and I think it has something to do with me being an extrovert, but I'll delay judgment. See what I did there? But I like to write. Journaling is a meditative practice for me, in that I'll set aside some time for observing the experience, but it seems to me to help me focus and guide my thoughts to write them down. And this will probably die with me. This is like a document that just kind of exists that nobody's ever going to read, unless I get really famous. Look out. Watch out for all the stuff that I wrote there. But non-judgmentally, kind of going through the process of thinking through thoughts or observing thoughts in full. Do you ever recommend journaling in this capacity? And then if so, how do you go about recommending prompts for people?
I know plenty of people that journal versus a sitting meditation, just because they just feel like their skin is crawling if they try and sit still.
Sure.
Because they're so hyperactive. The ultimate thing here looking for is mindfulness. Meditation is a mindfulness practice, but it's not the only road to mindfulness, because mindfulness is just about being fully immersed in the experience you're having. As you're writing, you can feel the texture of the paper. You can feel the movement and the resistance on the page of what you're writing. You know, if you just want to doodle, just to kind of feel what it's like for your hand to move. Some of these master painters, poets, calligraphers, I don't buy for 1 second that they weren't lost in the movement of what they were doing. They were totally mindful, and that was an extension of their attention. They turned it into a musical piece or a masterpiece painting or anything like that. So journaling, it all comes down to, were you present with what you were doing? Were you present with the writing? Was it flowing, or were you simply, oh, no, I can't write that. Oh, people are going to think I'm stupid. No. If you're doing that kind of journaling, that's not mindful. Mindful is you're just having the experience of writing. You're letting stuff come out however it comes out.
Well said. I love that. Thanks for that, man.
You bet.
So let's shift the conversation a bit into, because we're talking meditation here, but let's shift the conversation a bit into one of your favorite topics right now. Well, it's your favorite. I think it's one of your favorite topics generally, but in the moment, one of the things that you're talking about deeply is self-compassion. And I don't want to expand on this for you. This is something you've probably developed way better than me, to be honest. When I think of the idea of self-compassion, I'm like, I don't know if I can put my finger on it, but I'm probably really bad at it. But I guess that's a subject worth talking about another day. Can you tell us about how your meditative practice leads to a passion for self-compassion? And what does that even mean?
Well, compassion in general is being able to look upon another being, in our case, a human being, and realize that this person is driven by the desire to relieve their own suffering. And as human beings, we all suffer. And what is that suffering? It's our desire to hang on to things and control things when we know everything comes, everything goes. And it's trying to fight against that reality. You know, I want it to stay. I want it to be here forever. Never going to happen. It's always going to go away. And the suffering that's created with hanging on so tight and seeing it all go. So having compassion for somebody else, saying, I see that you're suffering. And you know what? I suffer in a similar way, because this is part of the human experience and it connects us all. So to see you as less than me, not even possible, because we are underneath the same struggling human being trying to figure this all out. And you don't judge them for what they're doing. You don't get all high and mighty. You see them as equals, and you work to relieve your own suffering, and your suffering is human suffering. So if somebody else has human suffering, it makes sense that you would want to take care of them too, or offer them some assistance. Because if you help one person, then you help humanity because we're all suffering the same way. Now, self-compassion is when you make a mistake, when somebody's upset with you, anything that you might ordinarily judge yourself for. You can look at yourself and say, what did you expect? You're only human. You're still trying to figure this thing out. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to stumble and fall. And you know what? It's just like everybody else. Because a lot of the criticism we experience is the comparison. I need to be smart so I can be smart like this person. I need to make more money so I can have stuff like that person does. I need to have more attention so I can be as famous as that person. All that not good enough, that heavy criticism, is because you are comparing yourself to other things, other people, instead of just saying, you know what? Underneath all the fanfare and the pomp and circumstance, we're all just human beings trying to figure it out, making mistakes, stumbling and falling, having fears, and that's the normal. And if you can see that in yourself and say, man, this is just how it rolls to be a human being.
There's a interesting body of research that looks at chronic disease and our proclivity to take the pills that we need to take when we need to take them. It's like 50%. Like, let's say you have a kidney transplant and you have to take these immunosuppressant drugs in order not to die because of your kidney transplant. It's like 50% adherence. It's crazy. But if your dog gets sick and needs you to administer a pill, compliance is somewhere between 80 and 85%. And it blows my mind to think that as a population, we're way more willing to take really good care of our dog than to have compassion on ourselves and take care of ourselves in this capacity. And I think as I hear you speaking about this, it's the desire to, well, maybe not the desire. Let's see. It's the practice of giving yourself the same level of care, maybe benefit of the doubt, maybe observance of the real practical person that is you right now, giving yourself at least that status, not worse. Not like you're not even worth your dog. So you're not even worth the same level of care as your dog. That's kind of what I hear as you're speaking. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what I see in people was, well, first of all, your pet is something you're emotionally attached to. And when we're talking before about wanting things to remain, you understand things are temporary, but you want that to last as long as possible. And your pet is your buddy. For some people, your pet is your child. And you don't want this pet going anywhere. And because of that fear of loss, you're going to do whatever you need to do for that. But when it comes to your own mortality and your own challenges, you tend to be in hefty denial.
Well said.
You know, you think, oh, I got 40 more years. Easy, man. Oh, but you smoke and you drink. Who cares? My uncle lived to be 100, blah, 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 blah. And there's this big story to justify not taking care of yourself. Because, oh, I'm going to be fine. I'm not worried about it. And it's that story that encourages self-neglect. But it's a different story with something you're attached to. We largely take ourselves for granted. And that's one of the reasons why it's not usually somebody's instinct to say, man, I need to be easier on myself. I need to practice some self-compassion. You know, usually there's some kind of insight into how you're treating yourself and that you have the option and power to change that. That's what tends to start getting people to think about self-compassion.
I love that. One of my gifts is encouragement and admonishment. And so I would never classify myself as a highly compassionate person, maybe even with myself.
You're an admonisher?
Admonisher. Yeah, go figure in the coaching industry.
Who do you admonish? Thank goodness I haven't been admonished by you.
It's all because I know it's helping you. But no, you know, to anybody listening right now, you are likely fighting a hard battle. You're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. High five to you. You probably didn't hear this today, so I want you to hear it, at least from me, if not also from Brian, that what you're doing matters and that you should, if you can take some time to do so, you should give yourself some credit. Brian, what, if anything, would you add to our conversation about meditation and self-compassion here before we switch gears and talk a little bit about what you're doing in the world right now?
You must be patient with yourself. It's not like popping a pill and the pain goes away. It's a marathon, not a sprint. When you're meditating, try not to think about it in terms of, did I do it right or did I do it wrong? No such thing. You are refining your capacity to be fully alert and aware. There are going to be some days you're tired, more tired than others. Some days where you're more scattered than others. In my case, some days where I'm in more pain than others. And pain is distracting and exhausting. But you do the best you can with however you show up. And be grateful for the opportunity to practice that. And over time, you're going to see yourself feeling lighter. Your thinking will be clear. You'll be a lot less reactive. And it'll just happen organically. The important thing is to get into the practice. Get into the habit of being mindful or meditating every single day to some degree.
So I would encourage everybody listening to rewind about 1.5 minutes and listen to that at least 2 more times. Because if you're struggling with the meditative practice or struggling to know where to start, I can't add to that. It was just a really beautifully succinct thing to just, I'm going to forward this to all my clients who are like, what do you think? Like, how do we do it? Like, hey, you know what? Here's 90 seconds. Listen to that. And then ask me questions afterward.
That's going to be the trailer for this interview.
You got it. This is going in the trailer. Everybody heard it here first. Note to my sound editor. So I want to talk about what you're doing in the world right now. And you're doing quite a few things, not only in addition to being a father and an entrepreneur and all of the above here, but let's talk about your mentoring and coaching around helping parents guide their children through ADHD and then also some of the difficulties in childhood, because we just released a show, Exercise in the Brain Part 3. I say we just did. It's been a couple weeks, and everybody forgive me. I have a newborn, and the last 6 weeks of my life have just blown by. So I want to say we released it in December, and I'm fully aware it's March, but it feels like yesterday. Okay, we just released Exercise in the Brain Part 3, talking about exercising in a way that helps with the symptoms, quote unquote, of ADHD, inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, inability to focus, those sorts of things. But you're helping parents with regard to understanding how to guide their child through the process of, for lack of a better way to put it, navigating the river of their own mind and their experience in the day-to-day. Can you tell me a little bit about what it is you're doing and who's been reaching out to you for help and how you're starting that process for people?
Primarily, I'm helping parents understand what it's like to be in their kid's skin. Because if you have a parent that's typical, doesn't have these challenges, and a child that has ADHD, it's like trying to get a Mac to talk to a PC. There can be that disconnect, and each side mistakenly believes the other side knows what they know and is just being stubborn. And they don't realize that, you guys are missing each other in a big way. So I need to teach the child how the parents think of the parents, how the child thinks, and then I need to help them bridge the gap so they can connect with each other and work as a team instead of all the power struggles. ADHD, there's so many holes in the way we're able to take in information because of our glitchy attention span. We get a bit here, a bit here, a bit there, and we're working with an incomplete puzzle and trying to make a sense of it and make a hole in our brain. So we run around feeling stupid, confused, like we don't fit in, we can't keep up, and that are not good building blocks for healthy self-esteem. So I got to work with the kiddos to unlearn these conclusions they've made about themselves so they can rebuild something that is more confident, more resilient, and more self-compassionate. Where's that word again? And I got to teach the parents how to be much more patient, how to guide through strategic asking of questions instead of lecturing all the time. So there are a lot of different levels to this. But at the end of it, I want to see an empowered child who has ADHD and is kind of immune to criticism of it. Because they have that self-compassion that says, are you perfect? Yeah, I got all these glitches in my brain, but I bet you've got your struggles too. You're just afraid to share them. You're afraid to be vulnerable. I'm not. I totally accept who I am, that I have strengths and challenges like any other human being. Mine just happens to have a label. And because of that, it allows me to focus my efforts on getting the tools and the knowledge and the relationships I need to be successful.
Well said.
And that's where I hopefully will get these kiddos to. And I've been doing this for like 12 years. Overall, my big umbrella goal is to break down stigma between the typical community and the disabilities community.
I love that we were talking about my lane a little while ago and how being focused can be a powerful way to make change for people. And it sounds to me like your lane is similarly put in that regard, because I think whether you have a kid who's wrestling with inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, and whatnot, then I think all of us want what you just said for our kids regardless. Is the self-understanding to utilize their mental capacities, their gifts, and maybe even their weaknesses to the best of their ability, and to be confident in their belief that who they are is not only good enough, but probably even better.
Yeah, it's good enough and it's valuable.
Well said.
That by you showing up, you can add something to the mix that only you can bring to it.
So in my show with Exercise and ADHD, I shared a little bit about my experience growing up, and I tell a story about my mom. When we talk about hyperactivity, I could probably share like a 2-minute video of my son currently. He's 3.5 years old with everybody. And then you get a nice window into pre-iPhone Alex as a 3.5-year-old, because that's me pirouetting on one foot while I'm talking to you because, why not? And standing on my head. If I was sitting still looking you right in the face, I wasn't listening to a word you were saying.
My youngest used to climb on the couch and then spin upside down and with his head on the cushion, and he would watch TV like that.
and that's like, oh, this is me enjoying my show while my feet flail in the air.
Yeah, and he thought nothing of it. It just made sense to him to do that.
So I tell a story about how my mom, when she really wanted me to sit still and pay attention, maybe she was teaching me some flashcards. She taught me to read before I was 4 years old. Like, she was a really patient woman, and it helps that I was the firstborn child. But she would be like, all right, Alex, we're going to go outside. Let's see how fast you can go around the building. And boom, I would just take off. We would live in an apartment complex. It'd take me like 30 seconds, and I'd come around and she'd send me again. Man, 10 laps later, I was worn out, and then you could get me to sit still and teach me something. But my mom's message to me as a child was not, sit still, shut up. Why are you always moving around and you're breaking stuff? Like, what's wrong with you? And it was like, hey, you've got great energy. Let's take that somewhere where you can do something constructive with it. And that spirit is what I hear in the guidance that you're providing to parents who might otherwise be in a really difficult position with their kids.
And it's beautifully reciprocal. It's, what do you need that I can give you so that you can give me what I need? I need to give you that opportunity to organize your brain and decompress some of this restlessness that you have. And running laps around the building will do that. Again, my youngest, when we taught him to self-advocate, when we were sitting at a restaurant, he'd say, I need to run. And my wife would take him outside and he would run laps in front of the restaurant.
That's beautiful.
Maybe 3 or 4, full speed. And then he would just go to her and say, I'm done. And they go back in, sit at the table.
And we're good.
We're good.
And we're not trying to rip our hair out at the restaurant. Like, just sit still.
There's none of this, well, honey, I don't know if that's appropriate for you to be doing. People are going to be watching. And what if you get hurt? There wasn't any of that nonsense.
I love that.
It was, what do you need and how can you get it for yourself unapologetically? I mean, there's that old saying that what other people think of you is none of your business. The way I interpret that is, we are not here to please everybody. So there are plenty of people out there that have an opinion about you, and by and large, none of those opinions will impact your bottom line. They won't affect your current relationships. They certainly won't affect the amount of debt you have. So God bless them. Let them go off and do something else. But the people whose opinions do matter are probably the ones you're in heavy conversation with. And when it comes to running in front of the restaurant or doing laps around an apartment building, other people have opinions about it. Oh, well, none of my business. My business is all about what do I need to do to be successful.
Your youngest and my self-advocating sound exactly alike. Like, I can be visiting family over the holidays and I wake up at 8. My wife's like, what are we going to do today? I'm like, I don't care. I need to go run. And then when I come back, we can have a great conversation about it. So
there you go.
I'm over 30 and I'm still there.
You do what you got to do, man.
Love that. So what would you say to anybody who has a kid right now that they're struggling to relate with on that level, ADHD or otherwise? How can they get connected with you? And what would you guys start with?
Well, go to my website, themindsetking.com. And the fact that you realize that you're missing something is a critical first step, because there are so many people out there that don't know what they don't know and almost pretend like there are no blind spots. Oh, I know everything. I've got this degree, or I've read that book, or I've gone to these conferences. Yeah, and your results still suck. So that means you got some blind spots you haven't spotted. So when you realize, there's something I got to be missing here, let me reach out to somebody. That is one of the most important first steps you can take. The next one is go to my website, reach out to me. You can message me through the contact form, and we'll have a conversation about what's not working for you. What would you like to see as outcomes for you and your child? And we'll see if we can make it happen.
I love that, man. So the mindsetking.com, I'll make sure that that's posted in the link to the show notes here below. And I know that you're also relatively active on social media and whatnot as well. But if they fill out that form, then from there you can connect them to other resources, obviously, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, I'd like to give you the last word on this. We've talked about meditation. We've touched on ADHD. We have talked about self-compassion, and we've also talked about swimming out of the river and just watching it go by without judgment. And it's been a powerful conversation, but I'd like to let you have the last word so that if people don't take anything else away from you today, what do you want them to hear?
Life isn't about being the best or the fastest, the wealthiest. It's not about squeezing everything in you possibly can. You're never going to live long enough to do it all. But whatever you do, whatever you give your attention to, be present, live it fully, so that when your time comes, you can say, however long my life was, I lived it fully while I had it.
I'm going to let that simmer. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you being on, man. And to anybody listening, thank you so much for joining us on the Defining Dad Bod show. Until next time, guys, kick butt, take names.
The free practical advice and conversations here remain unbought and unbiased thanks to the support of listeners just like you. For more information on how you can become a part of the inner circle of Defining Dad Bod, go to definingdadbod.com/inner circle.